Every time Grace Carter's husband was with another woman, he sent her 10 million naira. It became a regular thing. After 5 years, she had 70 million in her account. That morning, she got another credit alert. This time, there was also a video. It was from the 52nd woman. She looked straight into the camera and spoke clearly. She said Daniel was obsessed with her, that he had been with her 10 times in 2 days, and that he was already coming back to her. Grace didn't react. She put down her phone and brought out a document she had written long ago. It was a divorce agreement. She had kept it, waiting for the day she felt ready to let go. She walked over and handed it to Daniel. He was on a call, smiling and whispering. He took the paper from her, signed the last page without reading, and continued his call. Grace had given him documents many times in the past, property papers, land deals, contracts he never bothered to read. He always signed without asking. He assumed this one was the same. As he reached for his jacket and walked to the door, he asked what the paper was. Before she could answer, he said it didn't matter and told her to go ahead with whatever she planned. Then he left, saying the woman he was going to see was upset he had spent too much time at home. He didn't realize what he had just signed. Daniel still thought things were as they had always been. That she would stay. That the money was enough. But Grace was finished. She watched the door close and felt nothing. Grace could still remember how it all began. The first time she met Daniel was at a bar. She had only gone there to pick up a friend but ended up helping a drunk man who looked like he was about to fall. Out of pure instinct, she held him steady. That was when Daniel first looked at her, and according to him, he fell in love right there. Daniel was already well known in their circle. He was the heir to one of Asaba's most powerful families, wealthy, good-looking and reckless. Everyone knew his name. He always had someone new by his side, and his reputation for breaking hearts was no secret. Grace didn't care. She wasn't interested in being another name on his list. She rejected him without hesitation. But Daniel didn't walk away. Instead, he kept coming back. He showed up at her workplace with flowers. He filled a public plaza with roses on Valentine's Day. He arranged fireworks by the riverside just to make her smile. He kept showing up, loud, persistent, and certain. When she went through hard times, he was the one who stayed close. He made sure she saw him every day, acting like he was proving something. Grace had never been deeply in love before. Her life was quiet. But over time, his efforts broke down her walls. When they finally became official, Daniel changed. He cut off his old habits. He was loyal, open about where he was, and made it clear to everyone that things were different now. People said the former playboy had finally settled down. That love had changed him. Grace believed it. So when he got on one knee and asked her to marry him, she didn't think twice. She said yes. But a year into the marriage, the signs returned. Daniel started cheating again. Their home turned into a battleground. Grace found herself shouting during arguments, while Daniel just looked tired and distant. One night, in the middle of yet another fight, he calmly suggested they try an open relationship. He said it was a way to avoid divorce. That he still loved her, but couldn't stay with just one woman for life. He told her they could see other people, as long as they didn't get attached. He believed it would work. Grace refused. But Daniel didn't wait for her approval. He started living the way he wanted, and over time, it broke her down. Eventually, she gave in too, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to feel something again. She met Ethan during one of those quiet, empty periods. He was a university student, working part-time jobs to get by. At first, he was just a distraction. A small rebellion. But Ethan didn't treat her like someone's wife. He treated her like a person. He was kind, patient, and steady. When she got into a serious car accident, Ethan stayed with her through the entire recovery. He went to every appointment, waited through every test, and never once asked for anything in return. One day, Grace offered to buy him something, maybe a car or some land. But he refused. He didn't want anything except her time and care. When she finally gave him a chance, he looked at her like she was all that mattered. He didn't see her pain or her past. He just saw her. And that's when Grace understood. She had been chasing the wrong kind of love. Life was short. And she had wasted too much of it trying to fix a marriage that had already ended. Even a child knows when a door is broken, it needs to be replaced. So she stopped fixing what was beyond repair. And this time, she chose differently. She let Daniel go and gave Ethan a place in her life. Grace didn't spend the 1-month divorce cooling-off period second-guessing anything. She didn't wait for an apology or imagine Daniel changing his mind. Each day felt like progress, a quiet reminder that she was moving away from everything that had worn her down for years. When the 1-month period ended, Grace received a court notification confirming the divorce was now final. Her marriage to Daniel had officially ended. She printed the legal confirmation and placed it in a folder. Daniel wasn't at home that morning. She assumed he was probably staying with another woman. She didn't call him or leave a message. Grace zipped up her suitcase, placed the folder inside, and walked through the house one last time. She felt no attachment to anything in it. Nothing in that space felt like home anymore. She rolled her bag outside. Ethan was already waiting in a car. He stepped out, lifted her suitcase into the trunk, and opened the door for her to get in. They didn't speak much during the drive. That evening, they had dinner at a small restaurant near Ethan's apartment. It was quiet. Grace sat across from him and ate slowly. Ethan asked if she was okay, and she nodded. She told him she felt relieved. He didn't ask her to talk about Daniel. He just said she could rest now and take everything one step at a time. Grace listened. She knew this wasn't the end of everything, but it was the end of her time with Daniel. She had walked away from years of disappointment. Now she had space to figure out what came next. After moving out, Grace stayed at Ethan's apartment. It was modest and clean. He had already made room for her belongings. She didn't ask for much, and he didn't try to impress her. He gave her time to adjust. They settled into a routine quickly. Ethan went to class and worked part-time at a local bookstore. Grace spent most of her time indoors, working remotely. She didn't feel the need to go out much. But over time, she started noticing things about Ethan that didn't quite match the version of him she thought she knew. One afternoon, a black car pulled up as they were leaving a cafe. Grace assumed it was a friend doing him a favor. But the way the driver stepped out and addressed Ethan with quiet formality caught her attention. The language, the posture, it didn't feel casual. Later, during a weekend trip, hotel staff greeted Ethan by name before he introduced himself. They had his preferences prepared, the wine, the room setup, even the pillows he liked. Grace began to wonder how someone working part-time could be treated like that. At first, she didn't say anything. She wanted to trust what she'd felt from the beginning. But more signs followed. Packages arrived at the door unannounced. People called him by his full name with an unfamiliar tone of respect. Invitations came from places she didn't recognize. Eventually, she asked. One quiet evening, after the day had settled and there was no rush, Grace looked at him and asked directly. Ethan didn't avoid it. He told her the truth. He wasn't just a student trying to get by. He was Ethan Chapman, second son of a powerful and well-known family in Abba. He hadn't told her sooner because he wanted their connection to be real. He didn't want to be chosen for what he had. Grace sat with the truth. She wasn't angry. But after everything with Daniel, she was cautious. What she wanted now was honesty. No masks. No performance. Still, when she looked back, it made sense. Ethan never used his name to win her over. He had stayed when she was broken. He never asked for anything. He turned down every gift. What he gave without expectation. And now that the truth was out, it didn't feel like a lie. It felt like a door that had quietly opened. Ethan didn't rush her. He gave Grace space to settle into the new chapter of her life. He didn't bring up his family or try to change how things were. He stayed the same, working, making time for her, and keeping things simple. After some time, Grace told him she was ready to meet his family. She wanted to know more about where he came from. A week later, Ethan took her to Abba. His family's estate was large and quiet, with staff at the gate and a few workers waiting at the entrance. They greeted Ethan by name and opened the door like it was routine. Inside, he introduced Grace to his older brother, Michael Chapman. Michael was polite but observant. During lunch, he asked Grace questions about her past, her divorce, and what she was looking for now. His tone wasn't hostile, but it was clear he was protective of Ethan. Ethan cut the conversation short when it became uncomfortable. He looked at his brother and said plainly, "She's here because I asked her to be. That's all that matters." Michael didn't argue, but his opinion was clear. Before they left, he said to Grace, "I hope this isn't about the Chapman name." Grace replied evenly, "If I wanted a name or money, I would have stayed where I was. I'm here for peace." Later that evening, Ethan thanked her for the way she handled it. She told him she understood. She wasn't bothered by hard questions. After everything she'd been through, she wasn't afraid to prove herself. In the following weeks, Ethan didn't change. He didn't try to impress her or win her over with grand gestures. He stayed consistent, supportive, steady, and calm. He helped when needed, gave her space when she asked for it, and treated her with the same quiet respect he always had. Grace slowly began to lower her guard. She stopped comparing Ethan to Daniel. The two men couldn't be more different. Daniel used money to cover betrayal. Ethan gave her peace, and never expected anything back. As time went on, Daniel's life began to unravel. He continued entertaining different women, living without restraint, and ignoring his responsibilities. Eventually, the consequences started to catch up with him. He stopped showing up to key meetings. His reputation in business circles began to slip. There were quiet discussions in the boardroom, and eventually, his father stepped in. The board voted to remove him. Daniel was pushed out of the company he once assumed he would lead. After that, several of the women he had been involved with began to speak out. Some shared messages. Others leaked videos. A few talked about broken promises. Others described how careless he had been with money and people. His name began appearing in headlines for the wrong reasons. Business partners pulled away. Invitations stopped coming. His phone, once full of contacts and opportunities, grew quiet. Without the influence of his position, many of the people around him disappeared. The lifestyle he had built became harder to maintain. And the attention he had once welcomed now carried consequences he wasn't prepared to face. Grace heard about it from a distance. A mutual contact mentioned it in passing. Someone forwarded her an article. She didn't reply. She didn't look into the details. That chapter of her life was already closed. Daniel was facing the outcome of his own choices. She had nothing more to say. Grace built a new life with Ethan. They lived quietly, without distractions, and kept their focus on what worked for them. There were no public displays, no need for explanations. Ethan stayed consistent, just as he had from the start. He kept his promises, handled things calmly, and gave her the kind of stability she had never known before. Grace didn't look back. She didn't talk about Daniel, and she had no reason to. That part of her life was finished. What she had now was steady, and for her, that was enough.